for the Watchful Silence. The morning mist clung to the base of the Appalachian ridgeline like something alive, reluctant to release its hold on the ancient forest. Chen adjusted his expensive camera strap and grinned at his phone screen, checking the view count on his latest video. 23,000 in just 2 hours. Not bad for a Tuesday. "You getting this, babe?" he called to his girlfriend Stephanie, who trudged behind him with considerably less enthusiasm. Her designer hiking boots, purchased specifically for this trip and never broken in, had already raised blisters on both heels. She was 26, blonde, perpetually scrolling through social media, and deeply regretting letting Marcus talk her into this authentic wilderness experience for his YouTube channel. "I'm getting blisters," she muttered. But Marcus didn't hear. He was already filming himself against the trailhead sign. "What's up? Adventure fam. Chen here, and today we're tackling the legendary Whispering Pine Trail in the heart of Appalachia. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't this one of those cursed trails the locals warn tourists about?" He made exaggerated air quotes with his fingers. "Well, your boy doesn't believe in superstitions. We're going full send into the forbidden zone." Behind him, an elderly man sitting on a bench outside the ranger station looked up sharply. His weathered face, deeply lined from decades of mountain sun and wind, registered something between concern and resignation. He'd seen this type before, always saw them. The ones who came with expensive gear and no respect. The mountains didn't care about your followers. "Son," the old man called out, his Appalachian drawl thick as honey. "That trail's been closed for 2 months. Signs right there." Marcus waved him off without stopping his recording. "It's cool, Pops. We're experienced hikers." He wasn't. His most challenging hike to date had been a paved nature walk in Central Park. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? We get lost? We've got GPS, 3 phones, and enough granola bars to survive the apocalypse. The old man, whose name was Earl, though he didn't offer it, stood slowly, his knees cracking. "It ain't about getting lost. It's about being found by the wrong thing. You hear someone call your name in there, you don't answer. You see a staircase, you don't look at it, and you sure as hell don't climb it. And if the forest goes quiet, I mean real quiet, where even the insects stop, you turn around and you walk back. Don't run, don't talk, just walk." Marcus laughed, a sharp bark that echoed off the ranger station wall. "Dude, that's perfect. Stephanie, are you getting this? This is gold." He turned back to Earl, his phone still recording. "Thanks for the content. Man, really setting the spooky mood." Earl's pale blue eyes, still sharp despite his age, fixed on Marcus with an intensity that should have been a warning. "I ain't doing this for your videos, boy. I'm trying to keep you alive. The mountain's been here 480 million years. They got their own rules, their own hungers." Right. Ancient evil, cursed ground, all that jazz." Marcus was already walking toward the trailhead, Stephanie reluctantly following. "Come on, babe. We're losing the good light." Earl watched them disappear into the tree line, into the green cathedral of old-growth forest where the light turned aqueous and strange. He'd give it 3 hours. They usually came running back within 3 hours, pale and silent, refusing to say what they'd seen. But sometimes, they didn't come back at all. The trail started innocently enough, well-maintained, clearly marked, with cheerful birds calling from the canopy above. Stephanie found her spirits lifting despite her aching feet. The forest was actually beautiful when she wasn't thinking about it as content for Marcus's channel. Sunlight filtered through the leaves in golden shafts, illuminating dancing motes of pollen and dust. "See?" Marcus said, already slightly winded from the incline. He wasn't in the shape he pretended to be online, where careful angles and editing hid his soft middle. Totally safe. That old dude was just trying to scare tourists. Probably gets his kicks from it. They hiked for 40 minutes, Marcus stopping frequently to film himself delivering excited monologues about facing your fears and not letting superstition control your life. Stephanie had stopped paying attention, focusing instead on placing her feet carefully on the root-crossed path and trying not to think about the fact that her phone had lost signal 15 minutes ago. That's when Marcus stopped abruptly, causing Stephanie to nearly collide with him. "Holy shit," he whispered. And for the first time that day, his voice held something other than performative bravado. Babe, look at that. 30 feet off the trail, standing perfectly upright among the trees, was a staircase. Not ruins of an old building, just a staircase. It appeared to be constructed of dark, age-worn wood, maybe 15 steps leading up to nothing. Just air. It stood there as if a house had once surrounded it and then been carefully, completely erased, leaving only this one architectural element behind. Stephanie felt her skin prickle. That's weird. Why would there be stairs in the middle of nowhere? I don't know, but it's amazing. Marcus was already moving toward it, camera raised. This is exactly the kind of weird shit that'll make the video go viral. Marcus, wait. Stephanie caught his arm, surprised by her own reluctance. Something about the staircase felt wrong in a way she couldn't articulate. It was too deliberately placed, too pristine despite appearing weathered, and the forest around it was quiet. When had the birds stopped singing? That old guy said, that old guy is probably sitting in that ranger station watching reruns and making up stories about ghost stairs. Marcus shrugged off her grip. Come on. We're just going to look, we won't even touch it. But Stephanie didn't move. She stood on the trail, watching Marcus approach the staircase, and felt the weight of attention pressing down on her from all sides. The forest was watching. She knew it with sudden, absolute certainty. The trees themselves seemed to lean in, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out more light than it should. The air had grown thicker, harder to breathe, tinged with the smell of wet earth and something else, something old and organic and wrong. Marcus, please, she called, her voice smaller than she intended. Can we just go? This is freaking me out. He was at the base of the staircase now, reaching out to touch the weathered wood. In a minute, I just want to... A sound cut through the forest, clear as a bell, unmistakable in its familiarity. Marcus, his name, called in Stephanie's voice. Marcus turned back toward the trail, confused. Yeah? But Stephanie hadn't spoken. She stood frozen, her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror, because the voice had come from deeper in the forest, from somewhere beyond the staircase, where the trees grew so thick that the shadows beneath them looked solid. Marcus, the voice called again, and this time it was wrong. The cadence was right. The tone was right. But there was something underneath it. A hollowness, like an echo of an echo. Come here, I found something. Marcus's expression changed. The cocky confidence drained from his face, replaced by something primal and cold. Even his social media-addled brain recognized that this was wrong. That was Stephanie's voice, but Stephanie was behind him on the trail, and her lips weren't moving, and her face was a mask of terror. What the fuck? He whispered. Marcus. The real Stephanie screamed now, panic overriding her paralysis. Get back here. Now. He stumbled backward, away from the staircase, his camera forgotten and hanging loose around his neck. His eyes remained fixed on the shadows beyond the wooden structure, where something was moving. Something that walked on too many joints, that was too tall and too thin, that might have been a deer if deer moved like spiders and had eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Marcus ran. He crashed back through the underbrush toward the trail, his expensive outdoor jacket catching on branches that seemed to reach for him, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He reached Stephanie, grabbed her hand, and they ran together back the way they'd come, running despite Earl's warning not to run. Behind them, the forest came alive with sounds, footsteps that matched their pace, breaking branches that suggested something large moving parallel to the trail, and voices. Dozens of voices calling their names in the tones of loved ones, friends, family members. Marcus heard his mother, dead 3 years now. Stephanie heard her little sister, who should have been in college orientation 2 states away. Don't answer. Stephanie gasped as they ran. Don't answer them. Don't. Marcus stopped so suddenly that Stephanie yanked forward, their clasped hands nearly dislocating her shoulder. He stood in the middle of the trail, swaying slightly, staring at something ahead of them. What are you doing? Stephanie screamed. "We have to." Then she saw it too, and the scream died in her throat. The trail ahead of them was gone. Not overgrown, not blocked, simply gone. Where there should have been the clear path they'd hiked up 40 minutes ago, there was only dense, primordial forest. Trees that looked like they'd been standing since before humans walked upright. Vegetation so thick it formed a wall of green, and standing among those ancient trees, barely visible in the shadows, were figures. Human-shaped but wrong, too still, too many of them, all facing toward Marcus and Stephanie. "This isn't real," Marcus said, his voice high and strained. We're just turned around. We went the wrong direction. Marcus." Stephanie's grip on his hand tightened. "Look at your feet." He did. They were standing on the trail, the same trail they'd been running down. The trail markers were visible, orange blazes on the trees. They hadn't veered off path. The forest had simply rearranged itself. A new sound emerged from the trees around them, low and rhythmic. It might have been wind through branches, but it sounded horribly like breathing. Deep, patient breathing. The breath of something vast and old that had been waiting for them since they'd passed the trailhead. "We need to find another way," Stephanie whispered. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. No signal, but the GPS might still. The screen flickered and died, battery fully drained despite being charged that morning. "Marcus, my phone just—" His was already dead in his pocket, he discovered. The camera, too. Every electronic device they carried, lifeless and dark. The breathing sound grew louder, closer. And then, impossibly, they heard Earl's voice. The old man from the ranger station, his Appalachian drawl unmistakable. "This way, you two. Quick now. Follow my voice and don't look back." The voice came from their right, off the trail, into the dense forest. Marcus and Stephanie looked at each other. Every instinct screamed that this was another trick, another lure. But the breathing was coming from ahead of them now, where the forest had swallowed the trail. Behind them was the staircase, and whatever had mimicked Stephanie's voice. Their options were death, death, or possibly death. "Fuck it," Marcus said, and plunged into the forest toward Earl's voice. The underbrush tore at their clothes and skin as they pushed through. Thorns found every exposed inch of flesh. Low branches whipped their faces. The forest fought them, held them back, as if reluctant to release them to whatever Earl's voice led toward. Behind them, the breathing escalated to a sound like wind through a vast cavern, and with it came the noise of many things moving through the trees. Large things, fast things. "Keep coming," Earl's voice called. "Almost there, through the laurel thicket. Just push through." They hit a wall of mountain laurel, the twisted branches forming a nearly impenetrable barrier. Stephanie sobbed as she forced her way through, her designer jacket shredding, her carefully styled hair catching on twigs. Marcus was bleeding from a dozen scratches, his expensive camera smashed against a tree trunk as he'd squeezed through a tight gap. And then, miraculously, they stumbled out onto a trail. A real trail, with fresh footprints and scattered granola bar wrappers and a family of hikers visible about 50 yards ahead, oblivious to anything wrong. Marcus and Stephanie collapsed onto the packed dirt, gasping. When they could breathe again, they looked back at the laurel thicket they'd emerged from. Dense, yes, but not impassable. Certainly nothing like the hellish barrier they'd just fought through. The forest beyond looked like any other forest, pretty, dappled with sunlight, ordinary. "Did you—" Marcus started, then couldn't finish. "Couldn't." "Yeah," Stephanie said. They sat in silence for several minutes, listening to the normal sounds of the forest. Birds, insects, a distant woodpecker, the chatter of the hiking family ahead of them. Everything was perfectly, blessedly ordinary. "We should go," Stephanie finally said. "Before—" "Yeah." They helped each other up and began walking toward the trailhead. Neither suggested documenting what had happened. Neither reached for a phone or camera. They walked in silence, staying close together, occasionally glancing over their shoulders at the forest behind them. When they reached the ranger station, Earl was sitting on the same bench in the same position, as if he'd never moved. He looked up as they approached, his expression neutral. "Made it back," he observed. "You—" Marcus started, then stopped. "We heard you. In the forest. You called to us. Let us out." Earl's eyebrows rose slightly. "Did I now? Interesting. I've been sitting right here for the past hour." He gestured to the empty coffee cup beside him, still steaming slightly. "Didn't go nowhere." Stephanie felt her legs weaken. "But your voice—" "One of the rules I didn't mention," Earl said, his pale eyes unfocused, looking through them rather than at them. "Sometimes the mountain decides to give folks a chance, usually doesn't. Usually it just keeps what it catches. But every now and then—" He trailed off, then seemed to refocus on their faces. "You two look like you could use some water. Ranger station's got cold drinks inside." "What are they?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's out there?" Earl was quiet for a long moment, watching the tree line. "Old things," he finally said. "Things that were here before the Cherokee, before the Shawnee, before any human set foot in these mountains. Things that remember when the world was different. The mountains are old, son. Oldest mountains on Earth, near about. Worn down from peaks that once touched the sky. And old places got deep roots and deep memories and deep hungers. The staircase—" "Don't!" Earl's voice was sharp. "Don't talk about what you saw. Don't post about it. Don't go back looking for it. You were given a chance to leave. That don't happen twice." Stephanie's phone suddenly vibrated in her pocket, causing her to yelp. Signal had returned along with battery life, 40% impossibly when it had been completely dead. Notifications flooded in. Messages from friends, emails, app updates, all time-stamped from the past 3 hours. 3 hours. They'd been in the forest for 3 hours, though it had felt like 30 minutes. Marcus pulled out his own phone, equally inexplicably revived. His camera too had power again, though the lens was cracked from its impact with the tree. Without discussion, he deleted the footage of their hike. All of it. Stephanie watched him do it and felt relief wash over her. "We're going to leave now," Marcus said. "We're going to get in our car and drive away and never come back here." "Smart," Earl said. He'd pulled out a pocket knife and a small piece of wood and began whittling with practiced, economical movements. "Course it don't matter much where you go, you've been noticed now. The mountains got your scent. They usually let the marked ones go, but they keep an eye on them. You might be in California or New York or Florida, and you'll catch something in your peripheral vision. A shadow that don't match its source. Movement in a mirror that you didn't make. Might hear your name called when you're alone in your apartment." He blew wood shavings from his carving. "Probably nothing will happen. Probably you'll live long, normal lives." "Probably," Stephanie repeated, her voice shaking. Earl looked up at her, and for a moment his eyes seemed much older than his weathered face, ancient and sad. "The mountains take what they're owed. Sometimes it's right away. Sometimes they wait. Sometimes they just like to remind you that you're alive by their grace, not your own cleverness." He returned to his whittling. "But you two seem like maybe you learned something today. So maybe you'll be fine." Marcus and Stephanie walked to their rental car without speaking. Marcus got in the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot with exaggerated care, as if afraid that driving too fast might draw unwanted attention. They were 5 miles down the mountain road when Stephanie finally spoke. "We're not telling anyone about this." "No," Marcus agreed. "We're not. Your channel. I don't care about the fucking channel." His hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. "I don't care about followers or views or any of it. I just want to get home and lock my doors and turn on every light in my apartment and never ever go hiking again." Stephanie nodded. She understood completely. They drove in silence for another mile before Marcus added softly, "Do you think it's true? What he said about being marked?" Stephanie didn't answer. She was staring at her passenger side mirror, at the reflection of the forest receding behind them. The trees seemed to lean over the road, their branches forming an arch, and just for a moment, just the briefest instant, she thought she saw something standing at the roadside. Something too tall, too thin, with eyes that caught the light like mirrors. Then they rounded a curve and it was gone, and there was only ordinary forest, dappled with ordinary sunlight, full of ordinary birdsong. Probably just paranoia, Stephanie said, but she didn't believe it. She could still feel it. The weight of attention, of being watched, of being remembered. The mountains had noticed them. And the mountains, Earl had said, were very, very old, and very, very patient. 3 months later, Marcus Chen's YouTube channel went dark. His last video, posted at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, showed him sitting in his apartment, unshaven and hollow-eyed. He didn't offer his usual cheerful greeting. He just stared at the camera for 30 seconds before speaking. "Don't go into the old places," he said. His voice was flat, exhausted. "Don't ignore the warnings. Don't think you're special. And if you hear someone call your name..." He paused, looking off camera at something the viewer couldn't see. "Just don't answer." The video ended. Marcus was never seen online again. Stephanie deleted all her social media accounts the same week. She moved from her apartment to a high-rise in downtown Chicago, 27th floor. No trees visible from any window. She kept every light on at night. She never went anywhere alone. And she never ever spoke about what had happened in the Appalachian Mountains. But sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, she would wake from dreams she couldn't remember, her heart pounding with the absolute certainty that something was standing just outside her window. 27 floors up, standing in empty air, watching, waiting. The mountains were old, and the mountains remembered, and the mountains never really let anything go. Earl still sits on the bench outside the ranger station most days when the weather's fine. He whittles. He watches the tree line. And when cocky tourists come with their cameras and their disrespect and their certainty that superstition is just for the ignorant locals, he tries to warn them. Sometimes they listen. Usually they don't, and the mountains are always hungry.